Alright, let's have a conversation, Marvel fans, because we have become the problem. Think back to X-Men in the 2000s. Think back to Spider-Man in 2002. We weren't being judgmental. We were excited to finally see our Marvel comic book characters get the chance they deserved, like DC had been giving to Superman and Batman and all these other great characters like Flash, that even if it got one season, still made it on TV. Now, Marvel had a couple of decent TV shows in the 90s, X-Men and Spider-Man, and we had Lou Ferrigno's Hulk way back in the 70s, 80s. But we had fallen off because Marvel was at a steady decline in the late 90s and they were going bankrupt. So we finally got a chance to see our characters get their due on screen. We weren't judgmental and needy and complaining and whining that, oh, this detail, and oh, that detail, and oh, this detail. And part of the reason we weren't like that is because there wasn't the age of social media where everything and everyone who has an opinion shares an opinion, even if they shouldn't. Even if their opinion is just to troll the comment section, or if it's just be judgmental and criticize without actually have even seen the movie yet. Now, we do also have the fans who are willing to accept any amount of garbage that's thrown at us. There's that side of the spectrum, where we're supposed to just sit back and accept that after all this waiting and all this time, the mystery behind how Nick Fury loses his eye is played off as a joke rather than this great epic thing that it could have been, because they had surrounded this mystery around his eye patch for so long. Well, we waited, and about 5 years after that movie, we got the answer to his eye patch. And it was a cat, an alien cat, scratching his eye out. The point is that Marvel has its faults, but we have our faults as fans as well. We have become just as toxic, and dare I say it, as Star Wars fans have since the sequel trilogy came out. Everybody was on their feet and excited and screaming when the Force Awakens trailer dropped. Everybody. My whole theater was erupted. Everybody said, yes, it is kind of a carbon copy of A New Hope, but it felt like Star Wars. Wind the clocks forward 5 or 6 years, and everybody is whining and bitching and complaining. And now that the sequel trilogy is out, those same people want to bag and rag and trash the prequel trilogy, the same one they said was garbage. The problem with the toxicity of fandom is that it is so easy to jump from bandwagon to bandwagon without actually acting like a fan at all. You don't act like a fan. We don't act like fans. A lot of the times, we kind of act like that toxic, jealous partner who's always whining and complaining no matter what you do. If you try to get something right, try something new, try to be innovative, we find a way to crap on it. We find a way to shit on it. We find a way to complain about it. We find a way to tell you that you're no good, no matter how hard you're trying. There's no looking for the positivity in all of it. Because, believe it or not, there is positivity in making a mistake. You tried something. Did it work out? No, maybe it failed. But hey, at least you can say that you were willing to try something new. You were trying to make a comedic show like She-Hulk, make it meta, give it a meta commentary like Deadpool. Which, by the way, everybody bitched and complained about that show. But everybody who complained about that show and said that Marvel has lost their edge, Marvel has lost their touch, the MCU is in shambles, clearly never opened a She-Hulk novel or a She-Hulk comic book. Because that's quite literally She-Hulk to a T. If anything, they nailed that show perfectly. If anything else, the fans who claim to be fans aren't acting like actual fans at all. But there are plenty of people, and controversial take here, myself included, who loved the She-Hulk series. My wife, who's not a Marvel fan or a DC fan, my wife only watches Friends, thought the show was hilarious. She loved it. She thought it was funny. She thought it was quirky. She laughed her butt off. And I laughed my butt off sitting right next to her because sometimes I like a change of pace. It was kind of whimsical and funny to see Matt Murdock, Daredevil, in such a weird kind of shifting of characters versus what his Netflix TV show version of himself had portrayed him as. It was nice to see him smile more. It was nice to see him laugh and joke and kind of be the butt of his own joke and be okay with that, because it showed that these characters don't have to be serious all the time. Sometimes there can be moments of levity. Sometimes there can be cringy, funny moments that happen that are out of character, because I don't know if you woke up this morning, but life is full of moments where we are all out of character, where we're all cringy. Are you telling me you haven't gone back on your Facebook timeline to see what you posted 10 years ago and tell me that the stuff you were talking about then wasn't cringy? That poem you thought was going to light up the world that you posted and thought, man, this is showing my heart and soul and my angst? Read it. It probably sounds like you're some lovesick puppy who found his way to his keyboard and thought, well, here goes nothing. And speaking of here goes nothing, that's what Marvel's strategy kind of after Phase 4 was let's see what works, what's new. We had a whole generation that grew up with the MCU from Iron Man in 2008 all the way to Avengers Endgame. 11 and a half, almost 12 years of one continuous story and plot lines and plot threads. It was kind of time for the changing of a guard. We needed something new. That's how you stay fresh. That's how you stay in the game. Notice that even though you're all complaining about Marvel, notice how somehow they're still one of the #1 topics discussed in social media. They stay relevant because even if you hate their ideas, they've still found a way to make you keep talking about them now, haven't they? And at the end of the day, all any media is really trying to do is to stay relevant. Whether they like the project you're working on or not, it keeps them coming back because they kinda want to see what's going to happen. Now, the Marvel fans who stick around for these projects and still complain, in my opinion, you guys are basically NASCAR fans. You're not there for the 200 left turns. You're there to see if it crashes and burns so you have something to complain about later. Whereas, in my opinion, I feel like the wider spectrum of people who aren't comic book nerds, comic book fans, as in the general population, the general public, the general consumer, they enjoy these projects more than the fans because they aren't looking at it with a tainted idea in their head of what they think it should be. No, instead, they're going in for what all media is meant to be. Escapism. Fun. This stuff is meant to be fun. You're telling me that if you could take all of the information you knew about Marvel Comics, all the information you knew about DC Comics out of your head, other than just the MCU, what you've witnessed from just the MCU, any kind of thing you might know from video games or other media regarding these superheroes you hold so dear or claim to hold so dear, if you took all that out of your head, all those preconceived notions, I bet you would probably have 10 times more fun at those movies, watching those Netflix or Disney Plus shows. I bet you'd have a whole lot less to complain about because you wouldn't have your expectations tainted by the reality of what you're watching. Now, people say, well, they never did this in the comics, and that's not how it's supposed to be, and they would have never done that. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but it's called a character adaptation for a reason. It's an adaptation, not a copy and paste. These are popular IPs, popular characters with great personalities, great traits, and interesting stories, incredible backgrounds, harrowing adventures, and soul-shattering heartbreak. That makes for great content. It makes for great stories. It makes for incredible filmmaking. It makes for great adventures. To go up and down on a roller coaster of emotions with these characters you say you love so much. It makes them kind of alive. And when you are hoping for a comic book character to just jump straight off the page onto your screen, well, I've got news for you. You'll be disappointed 9 times out of 10. They aren't ripping a comic book character straight out of the page. Instead, they are taking imitation. They are taking liberty. They are taking inspiration from this character. And they are making an adapted version, a version that feels more relatable or maybe more viable to today's day and age, conversations of today, topics of today, problems and things of today. That's why shows like Falcon and Winter Soldier are so great. They deal with things like systemic racism within our governments, within our people, within how someone would view a black man being Captain America when a white man has been Captain America for the longevity of that character's entire inception. It deals with what happens. But then you have those same people who watch that show, who complain and bitch and say, oh, Sam shouldn't be Captain America. He'll never be my Captain America. He's just Falcon. And I argue, well, have you read a comic book? Well, Sam and Bucky in the comics, before Falcon and Winter Soldier had even come out, had already been Captain America in the comic books for quite a few years at that point. It had already been in that same source material you were so meticulously defending without clearly, maybe, possibly having even reading it yet or reading it yet. It's sad that you can call yourself a fan, but the only thing fanatical about you is the energy you keep in which you use to tear down someone else's months and months and years of hard work to bring you something that they hope to God you would love. Isn't that heartbreaking? How would you feel if you had spent so long on something and you were creating this for somebody else to enjoy, to love, to view, to have, to hold, to keep, to bring joy to be happy with, to help them escape from their day-to-day lives for 2 to 2.5 hours. And you found a way to bring it to them in the best way, best form you thought you could bring it to them. And they hate it. And it's not that they just don't like it. They go out of their way to tell you how much they hate it. The disrespect you must feel as a director, as a writer, as someone who worked on this musical score, the composition, as someone who sat in that editor's room for weeks on end to make the best cut that you could work with based on the film that you had to work with. What about the visual effects artists? The unsung heroes? The ones who are critiqued the most nowadays, it seems. The ones who are destroyed the most on every social media platform you can think of.
God, that looked awful. Man, that looks like it wouldn't even render all the way. Oh my God, that is horrible VFX. How come a PS2 game cutscene looks better than that?
But you as a VFX artist know you spent months working on just those 2 shots. That you missed time with your family and birthdays and funerals and weddings. So you could sit there and create something that you love to do. All for someone to destroy it voraciously. When really, it's not even the VFX artist's fault. Almost every time it comes down to time constraint and budget constraints. They don't pay these VFX artists enough. They pay them bottom of the barrel and expect them to work 14 hours straight, 7 days a week to meet a deadline, all because their company decided to bid on getting that shot. And because they bid and won that bid, they now expect their employees, these VFX artists, to pump out magic on some shots that should take a month and a half to work on, and these guys are supposed to sit here and crank it out in a week with menial pay, menial resources. They're not even allowed to polish it the way that they'd want to. It has to be churned out all of a sudden so those movie trailers can go out, those teaser trailers can go out, the Super Bowl spotlights can go out. So they can upload as many clips as they can so McDonald's can produce Happy Meal toys. They need whatever semi-finished product that they can get in order to make money off of ad revenue. And then when the movie comes out, well, it's already in the final cut, so there goes being able to fine-tune and polish those VFX even more. But here come the fans, who don't do VFX for a living, most of them anyway, coming to destroy somebody's months and months of hard work for something they spent years and years honing their craft to do. At what point do you realize that you're not a fan? At what point do you admit that maybe you're just a critic? And a hyper-judgmental one at that. Why can't you just go to the movies? Why can't you just sit on your couch and watch Disney Plus? And just be grateful that these heroes that 15, 20 years ago you were made fun of, bullied, beat up, and ostracized in school for loving, finally have their place in pop culture, finally have the respect they deserve in media, finally they have the pedestal to stand on that we begged for decades and decades that the world should give them. And now they are the largest, most recognizable characters in the world. And still, it's not good enough. At what point do you decide whether you want to be a fan or a critic? Thank you guys so much for joining me. Follow me over on TikTok at MJClark21. My voice acting gigs on Fiverr are also linked through that exact same channel. I am a voice actor for hire. I hope you guys take it easy, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.